Alright guys, so we've checked out several of Noble Audio's true wireless earbuds on the channel, and they always kind of have a theme to them. They always have this really good sound, they're always using like multiple driver setup, but they still come in with a pretty hefty price tag, and that's going to scare off most normal consumers. A lot of consumers now are looking at the under $100, maybe even under $200 price range. So when you're checking out pairs like the Noble Audio Rex 5, which came in at $450, a lot of people are not willing to pay for that, even though that is one of the highest rated sounding earbuds amongst all of reviewers. So I found it very interesting that the pair that we're going to check out today, which is the Noble Audio Osprey, this is a different approach for them because these come in at $199 and it still has a multiple driver setup, and they're still trying to give you that audiophile experience in a pair of true wireless earbuds, but this time without breaking the bank. So we're going to see what all they've done here, what all they include inside the box, and see if it's worth the $199 price tag. So the first thing is they still are doing a hybrid driver setup. In fact, with this one, they're going with a 10mm dynamic driver along with their own custom balanced armature driver. In fact, they've even used a metal nozzle in here, which also kind of helps emphasize the low end a little bit. We'll talk about all of this once we get to the sound. And another thing that affects the sound quality, or what type of sound you're getting, are the ear tips. And inside the box, they've included 10 sets of ear tips, and you basically have 3 different styles to choose from. You have your normal, just regular silicone ear tips, you have a double flange style, and then they've also included foam ear tips as well. So there are plenty to choose from. Definitely make sure you try all of these to make sure that you get, the exact sound that you want, and obviously the best fit that you can get. But I actually, the ear tip that it had on it out of the box already just fit me perfectly, so I didn't have to really go through all of these. And then another thing they've included in the box is it does come with this little velvet pouch, and that's mainly because the case on these is aluminum. So the velvet pouch is just something you can throw the case in just to keep it from getting scratched up. And speaking of the case, it is not Qi wireless charging compatible, so a lot of people are not going to like that, especially in this price range. So they've also included a USB-C cable to be able to charge these. And speaking of the charging, battery life is also something a lot of people are not going to get excited about. On a full charge with the noise canceling off, you're going to get 7 hours on the earbuds, but with the charging case, you can look to get about 35 hours total. But if you decide to use them with the noise canceling on, you're only going to get 5 hours on the earbuds. So if you're going to use them with the noise canceling on, obviously you're not going to even get close to a full workday. So definitely keep that in mind. But if you do happen to pick them up and they are dead, it does have a fast charging feature where a 10-minute charge will get you 2 hours of use. Now moving over to actually looking at the earbuds, along with the case, it kind of fits this blue theme. And then same thing with other Noble Audio true wireless earbuds that we've checked out in the past. They definitely try to make them look like IEMs. So it doesn't look like a generic earbud. It actually has a cool theme to it. I do like the design that it has on it. It does use touch controls, and I am happy to say that out of the box, you do get control over everything. Now you can go within their app. You can switch around some controls if you'd like. I actually did because I didn't like the way that it had it set up. So it's nice that you can do that. And also the app allows you to keep these updated. There's some preset EQ options in there. And then there's also a 10-band equalizer, which I definitely recommend going in and playing around with that yourself. Now they also have like a listening test or a personalized EQ that it can set up once you go through basically being able to tell it that you can hear different tones. I did not like the one that it set up for me. So again, I highly recommend going in and messing around with the equalizer to kind of dial it in exactly the way you want it. Now, another thing you could do within the app is switch it between the noise canceling or the transparency mode. And as far as the noise canceling, now this is something that in this price range, a lot of people are going to expect higher end noise canceling. And I can go ahead and tell you right now, it does an okay job. It's just not something that I think is $200 good. I've definitely heard better noise canceling for less. But what the noise canceling does is it does do a pretty decent job of blocking out lower tones, but I still found myself listening to these in noise canceling because it actually kind of gives these a slight bass boost, and so it kind of blends better with the music. So that's kind of what I use noise canceling for. And then the transparency mode I feel like does a pretty decent job. I don't feel like anything sounds overly digital. I think it sounds fairly natural overall. So they did do a pretty good job here. Some other features on the earbud is it does have Bluetooth 6.0. It does support multi-point connection. It does have LDAC playback, so that is a huge plus. But this is another thing that if you're going to listen to it in LDAC mode, you are not going to get really good battery life out of these. So always keep that in mind as well. It does come in rated at IPX4, so that's, kind of just enough to kind of, protect you against slight rain, sweat, and things like that. But do not, drop these into water. It's not protected against anything like that. Now, if you are going to use these for taking phone calls, they are using dual mics. They are also using the CVC technology to kind of try to block out a lot of your surroundings and then kind of focus in on your voice. But you guys can be a judge by listening to a quick test here. So here is a mic test outdoors using the Osprey. I can hear an AC unit and a little bit of noise here and there. This is really just to give you an idea of what it would sound like if you were to take a call in public. So now let's talk about the sound. And honestly, this would be the reason that you would even look at these. If you thought about buying the Noble Audio Rex 5 or the Amadeus, which is their much more expensive true wireless earbuds, I think what Noble Audio is doing here is definitely hitting the sweet spot as far as trying to give you high-end audio without having to have that high-end price tag, because I do feel like the Osprey competes pretty well with the Rex 5 and the Amadeus. Out of the box, the way that it's tuned, it's not anything that's overly done. It's not trying to be way too much in your face. In fact, when you open up the app, it kind of shows you that everything is just at flat, like it's not trying to emphasize anything. And I went through the different preset EQ settings, and some of them were okay, but again, once I dialed it in with the 10-band equalizer, I definitely brought these out because these really can emphasize the low end quite a bit. And I don't know if it's because, obviously the dynamic driver is separated from the balanced armature driver. The low end never affected the mids and the highs. So everything else still retained a lot of clarity and a lot of detail, but the bass could have definitely quite a bit of boominess to it, especially again, mixing it with having the noise canceling on. So I like the low end that these had. I think that you could get it to a point that even for bass heads, they would be happy with this. But the mids and the treble retaining the detail that they do. I mean, even the treble has this brightness to it that if you're going to listen to it at higher volumes and you have it equalized to kind of bump up a little bit, you can get these to sound pretty harsh. So I like to kind of get it just to that point where it's almost harsh, especially if I'm going to have low end that has that much boom to it. So it, again, just kind of gives me a more in-your-face sound. The mids sounded nice and forward, so I never had any issue with hearing male or female vocalists. Acoustic instruments, electric guitars, everything had just this nice tone. So here's kind of the way to explain these. Out of the box, you can have just a nice, somewhat neutral, I don't want to say flat, like it's not flat by any means, but it sounds a lot more natural overall. Or you can have this really energetic feel. You can tune it to have that approach as well. And the only huge difference in this, depending on how you listen to it, is the soundstage and the sound imaging. So out of the box, these sounded pretty wide. I would even put them on par with like the Sennheiser Momentum 4s. It kind of gave me that vibe. But once you start, bumping everything up, like the bass, the treble, and obviously I'm having the noise canceling on to also kind of boost the low end a little bit, it starts to make you feel a little bit more isolated, like you're in a little bit more of a smaller room. But that also, could appeal to people. I like having that intimate setting, when I'm listening to music, and I don't always want it to sound like it's just super wide open. But either way, I never had any issue with being able to tell where instruments are coming from, so it did a really good job here. And to wrap this video up, and kind of my overall opinion on these, is the sound is fantastic, but that is exactly and pretty much the only thing you are paying for. You're not paying for incredible noise canceling. You're not paying for Qi wireless charging. You're not paying for smart sensors. You are getting LDAC, so that is a huge plus. But even that we've seen in some pretty inexpensive earbuds. But the ability to tune these and mess with the equalizer and the sound that it's outputting and at the volume that it's outputting, all of the ear tips, which again also play an effect in what sound quality that you're getting. It is the sound quality and nothing else that you're paying for. And in my opinion, it is definitely worth that price tag. So again, if you've thought about the Noble Audio Rex 5 or the Amadeus or any of their other true wireless earbuds, this is a great entryway into that without having to pay double for the Rex 5. But guys, that wraps up my video on the brand new Noble Audio Osprey. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for checking out all the other videos. And as always, make sure to stay tuned for more.